washed our hands in the sea as we saw this coming, we saw this coming. Love ain't always what you think it should be. We washed our hands in the sea as we saw this coming, we saw this coming. Love ain't always what you think it should be. We washed our hands in the sea as we saw this coming, we saw this
Oh, what's up, guys? What's up, Jordan?
Hey, what's up?
Have you guys ever met this guy? Probably not.
No.
He is Jordan Leibelt from Piano,
Yeah.
actually. And if you guys haven't heard, Nate is actually away getting married. Well, he got married yesterday, I believe.
Okay.
And so that's why he's not here. And so you guys are stuck with me. And I thought this would be a good time for Jordan to come and help out. So that's
Yeah.
why you're seeing a piano here, because you don't play guitar.
I don't play guitar, but I was in the neighborhood. I had this along, and I thought, hey, why don't I just stop on by?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's awesome. So it's cool, and it actually worked out perfectly because today we're talking about something called hybrid picking.
Cool.
Now, do you know what hybrid picking is? Do you have any idea?
Okay. I mean, I got a slight idea, but I'll let you.
Okay, I'll explain it to you. So hybrid picking is kind of the penultimate, the greatest.
Cool.
I don't know if penultimate was the correct term, but
It works.
it's
Works
the
for
best
me.
style of picking for a lot of people. It's not going to work for every single genre, but basically what it does is it takes every picking style that there is in guitar, just about, and combines it into one technique. So
Okay.
you learn one technique and one way of holding the pick,
Yeah.
and that will do everything.
Sweet.
You do everything. So, and this is for acoustic and electric, which is great. So
Mm-hmm.
those of you guys who are acoustic players and you see me playing an electric guitar, it doesn't matter. This is great for acoustic. I use it on acoustic all the time. And the reason why we have a piano here is because it allows you to do something that makes your chords sound piano-like. So
Right.
I thought it would be good. Maybe you could give some examples later on when
Yeah.
we get to it, and just how kind of the approach to chords changes, just in the feel and stuff like that. So, okay, I'm gonna kind of do double duty here. So I apologize if I'm looking over at notes and stuff. But, okay. So what you can use hybrid picking for, what we call playing multiple strings at the same time instead of strumming through them. That's kind of the main piano-like aspect, and we'll
Okay.
touch on that in a bit. This is a bit of kind of like all the things you can do. We can do double stops, which double stops are just playing two notes at the same time. So quite often we strum them, right? So we'll strum both strings at the same time and play them, but using hybrid picking, we can do this differently, and it's gonna sound a little bit cleaner. Then we've got regular old finger picking. So no pick, sans pick, that kind of finger picking.
Yeah.
We're gonna do with a pick, and you can do it and it will sound the same. Then we've got string skipping, which is more of an advanced kind of like metal technique, but you can do it really, really well with hybrid picking. Chicken picking, which is my favorite kind of picking, which
Yeah.
is like a country style picking. And then something like staccato picking is kind of or it's maybe more plucking, which I'll show you guys a little bit later. So
Sweet.
we'll start with just the technique.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward. This lesson's gonna move pretty quick, and I will say there is there's no PDF, there's an MP3. So of the jam track that we will play later, that track we just played is actually one of my band songs. I thought it'd be a cool opportunity to kind of jam on it.
Yeah, it's a cool tune.
Yeah. And then, so there is a jam track, and then if you guys do have questions as we go, like I said, it's a bit of a shorter lesson, so we will have more time for questions. If you guys don't have questions, that's fine. So, okay, so the basic technique, pretty straightforward. If we have the camera here on my hand, what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab the pick like we normally would, right? Between our index finger and our thumb. And we're just gonna bring it up to the strings in a totally normal way as if we're gonna strum, right? Nothing weird about that. One of the things that I find helpful is anchoring my hand on the bridge. Not everyone will do this, but if you anchor your hand on the bridge, it kind of puts your hand, it gives you kind of like a point of reference, right? So you can see my hand, it's just resting on my bridge. Now, some people, they'll grab the pick with two fingers like this. For this technique, you wanna try and get rid of that one finger so that these fingers are all kind of flying free, like that. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take these fingers and we're just gonna bring them all in. So it almost looks like that. I can't quite see exactly what you're seeing, but all we're doing is we're putting all of our fingers together while we still have the pick grabbed. So when we put this pick on the strings, leaving our fingers like that, what it basically is gonna do is, let's say we put our pick up to that A string, like that. These fingers, 2, 3, and 4, are all going to naturally just want to sit on the strings like that. Okay? So they're just ready to go.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I should mention is when you're doing this technique, it's actually easier with no fingernails. A lot of people assume when you're finger picking that you might want to use or have fingernails.
Right.
This technique's a lot easier without, because of kind of the main technique actually is more of a pluck and less of like a pick. But it's very natural feeling. So when you bring your hand again onto the bridge, you put that pick down, that's a very natural spot, and these fingers should just naturally just line up on the strings. Now, there isn't really dedicated fingers for dedicated strings like you might see with fingerstyle. That happens a lot. You'll dedicate a finger to a string. This is a little bit more free form, I guess. This is not a very traditional way of playing. But what this allows you to do is you can play. You have access to all those. Obviously, that's very messy. I would normally be muting to make sure those strings aren't ringing out. So that first riff that I played is a good example of how I would use this finger.
Right.
Is what I was doing. Now, I was just using one finger. You could do that with more fingers. I don't think I can do it because of the muscle memory, but. So you add that other finger. Some people, they'll just like to use that one finger. Some people will want to use those fingers, and some people use all of the fingers. So it's going to depend on how you want to kind of appropriate this technique for your own kind of style of playing.
Right.
If you want to do more of the piano-like things like I'm talking about, which I'll show you how to do, that's a little bit more of a, you need all your fingers to make this happen, because we're trying to kind of mimic a piano player would be doing the same thing. But if you want to do more of like the chicken picking style of things, so if you're like a country guy, well then a lot of times they'll only use the pick and the one finger. And what this kind of does, this technique, is it's essentially substituting a flat pick for a thumb, or a thumb pick for a flat pick. So normally we would have, if we had a thumb pick, let's say, this finger would be free. So we'd have that, and this would be stuck onto our thumb. But because we're using a flat pick, so we can do all the flat picking techniques, we're just sacrificing this finger to bear down on the pick.
Yeah.
So we have normal picking technique like that. So I can have these fingers on like this, right? But I can still pick it normally.
Yeah.
There's no change in technique. I'm just choosing to use different fingers.
Right.
Is all that it is. So that's basically the technique. I want to make sure I didn't miss any of the things here. Okay, yeah. One of the things I will mention is start with just the one finger and get used to that. If you have any finger picking experience, it's actually going to be a lot easier because it's essentially the same finger independence. But I would just suggest starting maybe with just your middle finger and that, and just picking a chord. And just kind of start fiddling around with it like that and try alternating. This isn't one of those things where maybe like Travis picking where you'll have a set, something like that. Instead, this is, like I said, a little more free form and something you can turn into whatever you want it to be. Okay, this probably doesn't make any sense to you so far, right?
Well, it's really provocative. It's interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And maybe for you, this isn't going to make a ton of sense right away. This is one of those things that look at it, maybe it'll work for you, maybe it won't. A lot of metal guys, they're never going to get near this.
Yeah.
But for those of you guys that are maybe blues guys, pop guys, country guys, folk guys, that's a great way to kind of incorporate this.
Yeah.
At least from my experience and what I've heard.
Yeah.
And I know Nate loves to use this technique. He doesn't talk about it as much. He tends to focus more on alternate picking and maybe even a little bit of sweep picking. But with this, you can kind of roll them all into one. So.
Yeah. Sweet.
Yeah, so what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to go through each of those techniques that I've talked about and just kind of give you an example of how you would maybe use this. So the easy and obvious one is the piano-like, being piano-like and playing multiple strings at once. There's not really a good name for it, but I just call it piano-like.
Right.
Right? So one thing, and again, I'm going to get Jordan to give us an example, but if you were to, let's say, play like a G major chord, and you were just, I'm going to play a G major chord, how would you play it?
Just as a traditional piano player, I would just go.
Perfect.
Yep.
Right? So that's how a piano would play a G chord. Now, if I play a G chord, remember they're different instruments, so they're going to sound different.
Yeah.
But
You're right.
right? Now, one thing that you'll notice is no matter how fast I strum,
You're always rolling the notes.
I've got to roll the notes. So
That
exactly.
would be kind of the guitar. Yeah.
The guitar, the guitar version of it.
Yeah.
So what we can do is, the great thing is you get all that transient response just boom, like all at once on piano. So when you're playing piano and you're hitting, all the notes are going at the exact same time.
Yeah.
With guitar, even if you're going fast, you're still going to get that effect of there being a travel
Yeah.
through those strings, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it
yeah.
spreads the transients out a little bit, which sometimes you might want. The transients are just like that initial attack of a
Yeah.
note. But what we can do is, so if we listen, I'm going to try and play this G chord as fast as I can
Yeah.
to try and create that kind of effect. It still sounds like a guitar,
Yeah.
right? So what we're going to do, now the problem with this technique is that we only have 4 pickers, right? So we can't do every single string, which is kind of the problem. You have to kind of pick 4 strings. The nice thing is with most chords, you'll either be leaving out strings or there'll be strings that just aren't as important. So for my G chord, instead of playing this, I'm going to do this.
Okay. Yeah.
So as you can hear, that it sounds very different. If you
Yeah.
listen to the different,
Hugely. Yeah.
very different. Now, it's not the best in every case,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of times, with a lot of the stuff I know for me that I'm playing, I like to get that line up with the bass and the kick at the same time,
Right.
and right on that
Yeah.
right on that beat, right?
Yeah, it's good for really, really precise chord placement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when you're playing, let's say, a progression, I could go.
Sweet.
Right?
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm adding little rhythmic-y, doohickey things there, but it's going to sound a lot different than.
Yeah.
It's quite a big difference. And a fair amount of that is just the sound of the pick hitting all of that. There's a lot of thwack that you get that
Yeah.
you're not getting with your fingers. But that's kind of the idea of being piano-like.
Right.
Right? So I know there's not, we could probably dive into this more, and there's a lot more we could get into with sounding more piano-like.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of the gist. That's all I wanted to kind of explain.
Yeah, no, that totally, I totally get that. It's interesting that, so to me it also seems like something that's quite a bit more dynamically subtle.
Absolutely.
Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would even say it gives you more control over those dynamics,
Right,
right?
yeah.
Because I could, if I wanted to,
Yeah.
right, and pick and pluck quite hard,
Yeah.
or I can. So
Right.
I have a lot more just control in general. And yeah, dynamically, it just in general is going to sound different than someone picking. But it's nice to even just be able to have so much control.
Yeah.
And you have all those fingers are in position to mute. And that's such an important thing for guitar players is those extra strings ringing out, right, on the transition. Muting those between, my fingers are already in place. So then all my transitions are clean.
Yeah.
So it's a cool little technique like that, right?
Yeah.
It's not exactly like a piano. I wish it was more like a piano. But it's definitely
Don't we
going to
all?
sound a little bit more like that. And if
Yeah.
you're trying to get that effect, it's basically the best way to do it.
Okay.
And I mean, that we could get into the fact when pianos start to do the rolling stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the term you guys use, but
That's what I use. That's the term I use. Yeah.
And you can do that with hybrid picking.
Okay.
Right? Same
yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
So if you're a finger picker, you can do the same thing, and you could even now you have the ability to. You can combine them, right? You can combine that all at one time. You can strum. You can roll through the notes.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to do a lot of that stuff. It frees you up to be able to do that stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of the idea. Okay.
Cool.
So the next one, this is nothing like a piano, but string skipping. Now, string skipping, if you're not familiar with what it is the technique. I'll try and give you a good example here. But basically, what you're doing is you're playing. I'm skipping a string, right? That's all string skipping is. The problem is when you pick, that gap is actually really hard because you're not looking at this hand most of the time when you're playing
Yeah.
guitar.
Yeah.
And it's really like about, for me, it's a little easier because I play guitar for so long. I have a bit of that muscle memory. Like I know the distances and I can feel them. But like I'm really guessing and not sure when I'm
Yeah.
making those big leaps with my pick, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what you could do is you can use these other fingers and not make that leap. So
Right.
all I'm doing is I'm skipping the string, but this finger's already in position for it, right?
Ah, I
That makes
see.
sense.
Yeah, I think so. Cool.
So it gives me the freedom to do that without having to worry so much about being so pick accurate. It's not going to be quite, obviously it's not quite as fast as being able to like alternate pick through everything or
Yeah.
do some legato lick,
Yeah.
but it's going to be more accurate most of the time.
Right.
Which in most cases, in most musical contexts, being more accurate and hitting the right notes is going to be more important than playing fast.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's string skipping and how you can use it to kind of faux string skip. Then we have finger picking, which essentially I've already kind of shown you.
Yeah.
Finger picking, obviously you know what finger picking is. It would mean not having a pick and using your thumb and using these 4 fingers, or using a thumb pick. I know that that's really prevalent in a technique called Travis picking, which I am horrible at, so I'm not even going to attempt. But what it is it's alternating bass
Right.
while playing a melody
Yeah.
on top at the same time.
Okay.
Very indicative of like bluegrass and like that style of music,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm not good at it, but you can use this technique to create a faux thumb pick. So like this, I can do my pick between those, and I still have these 3 fingers free. Now, you might not be as comfortable with these 3 fingers as you would be with having your index finger to finger pick,
Yeah.
but if you just take a few weeks, the muscle memory will kick in, and you'll have no problem using these other fingers to do that same kind of
Cool.
idea. So it's nice to be able to do that. Now we have chicken picking, which is one of my favorite styles of picking.
Yeah. Favorite
Again,
name. That's my favorite name of all those.
Right? It's the best name.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it seems to have only been named that recently. It's
Really?
brilliant. Yeah. Yeah, I know. But it makes sense. And what you're kind of doing is you're clucking, is technically what you're doing. And what I will do is pop the string. Actually, I'll go on this pickup bin.
Yeah.
That's the idea with chicken picking, right? Is you're popping. So what I'm actually doing is I'm reaching under the string,
Yeah.
and most of the time immediately muting it after. So if I were to play like.
Cool.
Very like, you hear that whack, whack, whack
Yeah.
sound, right? And the idea is it's clucky sounding. So that's why they call it chicken picking a lot. And with chicken picking, you're not gonna necessarily use these other fingers as much.
Yeah.
It's more that middle finger. And again, some people use a thumb pick and their first finger to do this. Brent Mason, for example, if you guys know who Brent Mason is, a great Nashville player. And if you, again, look at the picking cam here, you can see the technique is just. You can do the same string. I could do like
Yeah.
something like that, or you can do stuff like that, right? So it's just alternating between using that pick and then that one finger. And the idea is it hurts at first, but it's digging in and really getting underneath that string and
Yeah.
popping it up. That's
Cool.
the idea. And for those of you guys that are really into country, make sure you have a compressor pedal. That's an important part of the country sound if you're playing
Right.
electric guitar in
Yeah.
country. So just a little tidbit. Okay, so the last little type of technique that this works well to appropriate is staccato plucking. And you might have heard this somewhere before. I'm going to butcher this riff, but this is the idea.
Cool.
But, everybody knows that riff, the Grange, right? ZZ Top. And what they're doing is they're hybrid picking. They're taking. And what you do is when you hop your hand like that, all I'm doing is, and I'm muting.
Right.
So then the strings stop ringing out, so I'm getting that. Pretty straightforward. Another guy who does this is Angus Young. Loves to do this.
Yeah.
He doesn't do it quite in the same way where it's pick and then pluck, but he'll just use his fingers like. That kind of idea, same kind of thing. Lots of guys love to use that. It's cool because you get like that.
Very percussive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the and that's one thing you'll notice is when you start using your fingers is you do get a lot more percussive. A lot
Right.
of these techniques are very percussive.
Yeah, that's what I was even just noticing. Just the,
Yeah.
the amount of the variation in the tonality just in these different finger picking styles is really cool just to hear.
Absolutely. And that's one thing too is you're not going to use all these styles. Like I said, I don't even use it for all these styles.
Yeah.
And it does make a huge impact on what you're doing tonally. So for
Yeah.
those of you guys who are fingerstyle guys, well, all of a sudden incorporating a pick might not be that sound that you want, right? And the same goes for those of you guys that maybe want to play blues. I am essentially, when I'm doing the hybrid picking thing, I'm really just playing blues, is what
Yeah.
I'm doing.
Yeah.
But a lot of blues guys never hybrid picked.
Right.
So when they play a double stop, I like to hybrid pick it, where a lot of other guys would. Right? Stevie Ray Vaughan tended to not hybrid pick as much, and a lot of those blues guys didn't. So it's going to be up to you whether, do you think that this double stop sounds better? Or one obviously has a little bit more pop and snap. But
Yeah.
it's not going to sound the best for everybody depending on the style and what you're trying to emulate and the tone that you're searching for in your head. So that's kind of the idea.
Cool.
So that's it. That's it for the teaching portion. Again,
Sweet.
it was a little bit all over the place, and this was kind of just an intro to hybrid picking in general.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll jump into some questions if we have one in there.
We have a couple.
Okay.
Here.
Great.
We got a question from Pia Jutsu.
Nice.
Apologies if I mangled that pronunciation. He says, which style of music is hybrid picking used the most?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I would say, see, it's tough because I'm very biased and I don't want to just, from my own anecdotal experience, just say,
Yeah.
well, you use it in blues and country.
Yeah.
It's used a lot in folk. It's used a lot in like a regular old acoustic flat picking country. You'll hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Obviously in like traditional country, like electric guitar playing.
Yeah.
When I say traditional, it's still contemporary, but you think of somebody like Brad Paisley, even Keith Urban, even though he's way more contemporary, not so much like the really, like the top 40 country right now is very poppy and almost Nickelbacky
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
Not so much in that stuff, but a lot of like the 10 to 20 years ago country,
Right.
that stuff, it was like very prevalent and people were using that in everything.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends like which hybrid picking style you're kind of going for. Because I'm trying to think who else used it a lot. I had some other examples in my head. I should have written them down.
Yeah. We know who comes to mind for me, just totally new to this, are you familiar with Charlie Hunter? Or is anyone familiar with Charlie Hunter?
Charlie
out there?
Hunter. I'm not
He's
super familiar with his playing.
He's like a jazz kind of funk dude.
Yep.
But he does a lot of just solo guitar performances. In fact, I got introduced to him. He played like an 8-string monstrous
Very cool.
guitar.
Yeah.
So and this actually sort of brings me to a question that I had, which is, it seems like these hybrid picking styles are really good for like solo accompaniment if you just want to kind of cover a lot of bases just yourself as a guitarist.
That's such a good point, and that's completely true.
Yeah.
That's completely true, because it all of a sudden, it gives you access to every single tone. And one of the things I actually did want to mention with
Yeah.
that is when you have your pick like this, you can actually just roll it like that.
Right.
So if you can see in this picking hand, you can roll it and you can still get the, right? Instead of, you just roll
Cool.
it up. So yeah, so when you're accompanying yourself, it doesn't really matter what style even. You can
Yeah.
still use this technique a lot. And a lot of those, now I can't pick out Charlie Hunter's music
Yeah.
off the top of my head, but a lot of those guys who solo guitar,
Yeah.
that's exactly what they do.
Right.
Jacob Wiens, I don't know if you guys remember his lesson. He uses it a lot because you're literally able to access both the flat pick and finger picking
Right.
at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Really cool.
Definitely.
We do have another question from Pia Jutsu again.
Okay, cool.
He said, what are your thoughts on using a thumb pick with hybrid picking and playing in general?
Awesome.
Yeah.
There is a company called Dunlop. If you've ever heard of Dunlop before.
Sounds familiar.
They make these picks called Herco thumb picks.
Yeah.
And I think they bought the rights to these picks. That's why they call them Herco.
Okay.
And what they are is they're essentially a hybrid of a flat pick and a thumb pick. And I actually used them for a long time, especially when I was getting into more of the country style and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I wanted to free up that first finger. So especially those of you guys who are already using thumb picks.
Yeah.
One of the problems is, and if you can see on this camera, is that the pick sticks out too far on a thumb pick. So what happens is when you bear down on it with this finger and you try and pick, it's like I couldn't even play. It
Yeah.
sticks out so far. These picks, they are way more inconspicuous, so they'll only stick out about that much. They'll just be the little tip on the end,
Yeah.
but it's still attached to your thumb.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nice. So then you can I can't really like do it, but you would have it like this, be able to do your finger picking stuff, and then you just pinch, and all of a sudden you just have a normal feeling pick.
Sweet.
My only issue with it is I make so many micro adjustments with my pick when I'm playing,
Right.
and I found like when I'm strumming harder, I stick more of the pick out, and when I'm trying to do like more intimate things, I'll bring the pick in,
Right.
and I like to be able to like tuck the pick away. So there's so many little techniques where it just wasn't working for me.
Yeah.
But I would really recommend looking at those for those of you guys, especially who are into thumb picks,
Yeah.
but especially if you're switching. If you're switching between a flat pick and a thumb pick, check these out because then you just can have one pick that
Yeah.
does everything.
Cool.
Kind of being the
You need like a retractable thumb pick, like a little like sort of like a switchblade thumb pick.
They make those.
What?
They do. They
Really?
make them. But they're a little bit awkward to adjust.
Right.
Right? So
Yeah.
that's the problem. And another problem with them is they're a completely different shape, like thumb picks in general.
Okay.
They're basically like half a pick
Yeah.
that sticks out, like as if it were split like that way.
You're right.
So it kind of makes them not quite the same. They'll tonally sound a little bit different, and they will feel different. So I
Yeah.
would recommend those. Again, nothing wrong with the thumb pick style of play, because that's a great one too.
Yeah. Is a thumb pick for a guitar and a banjo the same?
I think so,
Yeah.
except that with banjo, you would have picks on all your fingers. So they stick
Right.
picks on all of them.
Yeah.
Guitar, that's not really a thing. I think
Yeah.
there's a couple guys who have done it, but for the most part, we use either the flesh on our fingers or fingernails.
Yeah.
And to go back to what I was talking about before, the reason you don't want fingernails is so that you can get the meaty part of your finger under the string. Because if you have fingernails, it doesn't really give you, like, I'll try and use my fingernails, they're really short. It's like you don't have that dynamic range as much.
Yeah.
Where with the pads of your fingers, you kind of have. And I can pluck super hard, or I can be just barely touching the strings,
Yeah.
and it's going to sound a lot fatter. Like it's as if you had a pick that was half an inch thick and made of soft material.
Yeah.
When you play that, it's like, oh, it sounds chunkier.
Right.
Right. So that's kind of why we use the fleshy part of our hand.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah,
in there?
we got one
Cool.
from Jesse.
Okay.
She said, he or she says, "Hi guys, would you please discuss the pedals that you're using?"
For sure.
They look sweet down there.
Yeah. Jordan's got a pedal that controls the stage.
This is a Yamaha sustain pedal, just stock edition.
Yeah, okay, so we don't have a camera on it, I don't think, but I have just a good old tuner pedal, the standard old tuner. I change my pedal board all the time, but I've been stuck on this one for a little while. So I have a Sonic Research Turbo Tuner, which is just a great strobe tuner. I find when I'm playing, like when I'm gigging, having the strobe, now, quite often you guys are probably used to tuners that have a needle that goes like this, right? The strobe goes like this, and it uses a light, and it will strobe like that, one way or the other. And I find like my eyes can see that when there's a bunch of stuff going on. And it's
Right.
like kick it on, and I check my tuning really fast, and it's like, oh, I can immediately see. And they tend to be 2 or 3 cents more accurate.
Right.
So tuner, and then I go into a fuzz pedal, which I'll show you how awesome it sounds, because any opportunity I get is great. So this is like my normal sound.
Nice.
Kind of cool. Not great for any of the stuff that we do here, but I did use that in that opening song
Right.
for one little lick. So I have that, which is like an octave fuzz. And then I have a compressor, which basically just makes the clean sound a little bit better if you listen to the difference. Just makes it sound bigger, more
Yeah.
full,
Yeah.
right? And then I have a little boost, which is a J-Rocket Audio Archer, which is just a clean signal lift. I'm running, when you run a pedal board, and I've gotten into this before on some of the more pedal-focused lessons, but when you're running with a pedal board, there's a lot of cable that you're going through.
Yeah.
Just stop rubbing my mic there. A lot of people, they don't think about the signal as like a hose. It's such a great way to think about it. But like the longer the hose, the less pressure
Right.
the water has and
Yeah.
carries.
Yeah.
So the idea is you want something that'll lift your signal back up after you run through all this cable. So I use a little overdrive for that. And then I have my Analog Man King of Tone, regular old overdrive. There's a 2-year wait list for them.
What?
And if you want to buy one brand new, they're very expensive. Or buy one like in the moment on eBay, they're very expensive. So brand new, but buy it like right now.
Yeah.
If you wait on the 2-year list, it's pretty affordable.
Nice.
But was well worth the wait. I got it right after I got married, and it was like my wedding gift to myself, and it was awesome. And it's kind of the overdrive I use for like all of my tone. And then I have a Strymon delay, Strymon El Capistan, which I use for slapback. I'm trying to go through this fast. If you guys ever want detailed stuff, I'd be happy to talk about this in more detail. But I use it to get, so if you listen, kind of get that old school slapback sound. It's great for country and just kind of like rock. It's like that Black Keys kind of sound.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep, I do.
And then I have this Strymon Flint, which is a reverb. Very subtle.
Yeah,
just a
some
little spring
subtle
reverb.
slapback, subtle reverb. I like it.
Yeah, and then we have trem, which is like the other side of the Strymon Flint. It's this pedal is actually known for making people sick.
Whoa,
Weird,
why
right?
is that? It's made
Because of
asbestos.
the depth of the trem. The depth of the trem has actually made people sick.
Just on a frequency
which is
level.
crazy.
That
which
is
is
nuts.
crazy. So I try and use it very minimalistically.
Yeah, great power comes with great responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want to make people in the crowd sick. I would show you guys, but I don't want to make you sick. And then this is like one of my favorite pedals ever. It's called the Wet Mono Reverb from New Neighbor, is how you say that. And it's like my ambient. I have it set very subtly right now. Usually I have a little bit more kind of going on.
Yeah.
It's great for just ambient stuff, especially when you're playing, if you're playing by yourself and you don't have a band accompanying you, it's a great way to just fill space.
Right.
And that's it. And then I go into an amplifier.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we got a few more questions.
Great.
We got a question from Catman.
Catman.
Hey guys, Catman here. Sounds a bit like Jerry Reed. That's
Okay.
just a comment.
Yeah.
Do you know Jerry Reed?
Reed. I'll tell you guys, I have a bit of a problem, and it was when I grew up. My parents weren't really musicians. They listened to great music, but they tended to. It was like a lot of U2 and a band called 5440, Tragically Hip.
Yeah.
But I didn't get exposed to a ton of like the classic, like you must listen to this.
Yeah.
And then I got into metal, so I just really didn't want to listen to that stuff.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely know who Jerry Reed is, but I couldn't like come up with his music, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
Well, hey man, growing up with U2 and 5440 is better than growing up with Kenny G, which was my crazy exile as a child. So.
Oh man.
Count your blessings.
Okay, I will.
We have a question from John Murphy.
Okay.
He says, this is actually regarding metal here. He says, for
Cool.
finger picking, pardon me. For finger picking, do metal fingertips or fake nails work better? Thanks.
No, that heavy metal finger picking. Fingernails are definitely going to work better. The metal finger picks are designed for banjo, and they're even more aggressive sounding than like I think they just use like celluloid. It's the standard. It's like a plastic kind of poly thing. But honestly, your fingernails are going to be your best bet. Now, I'm not sure if you were here for the Don Ross lesson. Obviously, he's a fingerstyle guy, but he talked in length about fake fingernails. I know, it's a bit ridiculous, but you can go to a store or you can go to a nail place and get fake fingernails, and they're much, much, much stronger.
Really?
You'll look ridiculous, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Looks ridiculous. My very first guitar teacher I can remember when I was a kid, he had them. And I always thought it was so weird because his fingernails were a different color.
Bedazzled. It's a lot of sequins on.
Bedazzled. Could you imagine? Yeah, they're always painted very beautifully. No, usually they're like skin, flesh colored or something like that. But you can take those, you can shape them, and they're very strong, and you're not worried about breaking them. Nate grows his fingernails out a little bit. He has no problem. Personally, every time I've grown my fingernails out, I split them. And it's from, I have a habit of just picking too hard.
Right.
And because I'm usually just trying to be louder. And when I do that, I get splits down the middle of them, and then they're toast. So for me, it's just been better to just learn how to finger pick with the flesh parts of my fingers. But definitely fingernails if you can. If you can't, I would suggest fake nails. And if you can't do that, then I would suggest plastic finger picks. Again, they're not really meant for guitar. Few people use them, not really meant for it. Metal finger picks, I try and stay far away because tonally, you're not going to be getting the most out of your guitar. Like the way guitar is designed, it's to inhabit very specific frequencies, depending on the type of guitar you're playing and all those things. But that is going to exaggerate qualities in the guitar that you don't want to exaggerate.
Yeah. Cool. Let's see if we got any more questions here. If anyone has some more, send them on in. All we've got is just reinforcement from Jesse saying a detailed lesson on pedals would be great.
Oh,
At
cool.
some point in the future.
Cool.
So I actually do. I have a question myself, just about your little pedal board lineup there.
Of course.
Why did you put your boost in the chain when you did?
So this one here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll explain a little bit. This is, we got some time, so it's not a big deal. But basically what happens is the guitar comes out of the guitar, you have a lead, right? Or a patch cable.
Yeah.
And what it hits first matters a lot because of something called impedance. I'm probably gonna get them backwards, but what comes out of a guitar is very, very, very high impedance, I think, or it's very, very low. It's one or the other, it doesn't really matter. So what happens is the first thing that hits,
Yeah.
with a lot of types of pedals, what they do is they take what's coming in and they change the impedance on the way out.
Okay.
So you need to be very, very careful as to the type of pedals you put first. So that's why, for me, tuner is completely true bypass. So true bypass means that when it's disengaged, it's as if it's just more cable.
Right.
So it definitely, like, you get that little bit of signal loss, but it's as if it was just a longer cable, right? Because, again, it's like a hose. You're not going to have as much pressure the longer the hose is,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes you need to boost that along a little bit. So true bypass in the tuner, and then it goes into a fuzz pedal. Now, fuzz pedals are one of those things that they need to see a very specific type of impedance. They have to see a guitar level impedance. So that's the issue.
Okay.
Quite often, a lot of people will put a buffer or any kind of Boss TU2 and TU3, the standard tuner pedal that you'll see a lot of people have,
Yeah.
is a buffered tuning pedal.
Okay.
And a lot of people put that first. But if there's a fuzz pedal, not all fuzz pedals, but the majority, especially ones that use something called a germanium transistor, they will sound not how they should. Like,
Right.
you could listen to the difference, and it's crazy how different they sound.
Yeah.
So in this case, I have a fuzz pedal, so I have to put that fuzz pedal first. Then the next thing I have is a compressor.
Yeah.
Now, this is kind of where you could technically put a boost. You could put a boost after that fuzz. And I just played around and was trying to decide, do I want to put more level into and then compress?
Yeah.
Or do I want to compress and then bring the whole level up? And you can listen to the differences, and it's fairly
Personal
subtle.
choice kind of thing.
It really is. And
Yeah.
when it comes to boost placement, a lot of people would take their boost maybe and put it after their overdrives.
Yeah.
Right? And they'd use it as a lead boost or a solo boost.
Right.
But I have this dual overdrive. If I wanted to, it has two channels that they're technically basically two of the exact same pedal inside one box.
Okay.
And so I have them, you could set one so that it was like the one after got you a little louder.
Yeah.
But what I really like to do is actually kind of the old school way of doing it, which is, let's say, so I have this tone here,
Yeah.
right? Would just be to use my volume knob. And then bring my volume back down and just use my volume knob as an actual, like, boost.
Right.
So when I'm playing rhythm guitar, especially when I'm playing live and stuff and I can hear my amp, I'll actually be maybe on 7 on my volume knob. And what happens is it actually doesn't change the volume a lot, but
Yeah.
it changes the frequencies and they won't jump out as much. So you get a little less mids and a lot less highs.
Yeah.
So what happens is when I crank it all the way up, it gets a little bit more distorted and those mids and highs jump out so I can be heard,
Yeah.
and then I can come back. And I find it to be, it allows me to be a little bit more in tune with my instrument. As kind of weird as that sounds, the more kind of control that you have of the sound, the more of your soul you can kind of put into it,
Yeah.
I think.
No, I can totally get you.
As weird as that might sound.
Yeah.
So using your volume knob, that's, a lot of people set everything to 100%, max everything out,
Yeah.
and then use pedals to switch between it, and that totally works. But I just prefer the traditional style, especially
Cool.
recently.
Yeah. Sweet.
Yeah, man.
Right
more
on. Well, that's all the
questions?
questions I got here. So.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well then, we will wrap it up. I will just let you guys know if you guys do have any more questions about this, you can feel free to just drop them in the forums. Or if you're watching on YouTube, you can comment, and we'll make sure to answer those. And then we are going to play out on the jam track that I have downloadable for you guys. So,
Cool.
yeah, thank you everyone for coming out, and thank you, Jordan, for
Of
coming
course.
out and
Yeah,
hanging out
thanks
with
for
me.
having me.
I hope you guys like this little bit of a different setup, having keyboards here. I know
Yeah.
we're not keyboard players, but it's cool. And obviously, if you guys are interested in piano, piano.com.
Yep.
You can check out some
Come my
piano
way.
lessons.
Piano.com. Happy to help you out.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see you later.